I'm quarantined with my mom. We're both avoiding going out when possible because we're both compromised. So we just take short trips for any errands we need to complete in order to not go stir crazy. Today, she needed to get gas and we needed a few groceries, so we both went. We saw my cousin at the gas station, and after I went to one of the pumps, I said hello while my mom went to pay for her gas. After she paid, I started pumping the gas, and we all stood there chatting for a moment. When my cousin returned to the car, a man came out of the gas station. He was balding, unkempt, a patchy, short beard and old glasses, the kind you see in high school photos from the 80s. He was wearing a sort of tropical shirt with a notepad and pen in the pocket and dirty khakis and a tan jacket. He stopped at my cousin's car and talked to her. She's kind of small, so I stood there watching until she got in her car safely. And I heard it start. My mom and I were pumping the last bit of gas into the car. Both of us didn't need to do it, but we were both just glad to be outside for a moment. The guy walked to us while she was finishing up and said, "Are you having fun?" We just kind of glanced at each other and my mom said yeah, and swatted me to make me go to my side of the car. I didn't go. I didn't want to until she was in the car herself. The guy then turned to me and said, "Are you having fun with your granddaughter?" As if he were trying to make a joke, but his facial expression never changed. I just kind of gave him a blank stare and said, "That's my mom." I squeezed between him and the bumper and moved to my side of the car. He followed closely and said, "I just came here from Michigan. I've been here for 10 years. I got in and held on to my door." He stared at where I was holding the door, then at my face again. I was giving him the same blank stare and said, "That's nice." My dog stuck his nose out and began barking at this guy. He's a 15 pounds Yorkie and usually sweet, but sounded like an angry guard dog while he was barking this time. "Is the dog having fun?" the guy asked. I held onto the door tighter and said, "I guess so. Have a nice day." I closed the door quickly, locked it, and my mom drove off. My cousin drove after us. She had been watching the entire time, waiting for either us or the guy to leave. My mom and I both remarked that the guy was creepy, and we thought he might try to jump in the car. I'm glad I went with her today. For some background on me, I'm a 5'3" female. I used to have my hair colored in bright colors. At the time of the story, it was bright blue. And at the time of these two incidents, I was in my very early 20s. I live in the central part of Texas, born and raised here. It was a little after I'd first gotten my driver's license, when my mom had asked me to run to Walmart in order to pick up some groceries for dinner. I figured sure, why not? Plus I had just gotten paid. Maybe I could buy something for myself as well. Now usually when I go shopping anywhere, I always have my phone and headphones with me so I can listen to music while I shop. This day, however, I left my phone at home on its charger. Sucks, but whatever. I wasn't gonna take long to get what I needed. As I'm walking through the store, grabbing dinner, I start realizing something was off. I couldn't really understand why, but I started feeling like I was being followed. I looked around me as discreetly as I could and didn't really notice anyone. A few families, some college kids, and then this one guy in a dirty wife beater. I shrugged it off and figured I was just being paranoid, so I continued on my way. But every so often I'd get that feeling of being watched, so I'd keep looking around, and I never saw anything weird. Except, on my journey into a third aisle, I noticed the guy in the dirty wife beater again. He was some older white guy, maybe mid to late 40s. He had short orange blonde hair, a bit of facial scruff, and some sort of facial tic. He looked a little off. He was standing and staring. He didn't even have a shopping cart from what I remember, and he just stared at me. I turned back around and figured maybe I was blocking his path. I grabbed my cart and started wandering over to where the art supplies were, since I needed a new sketchbook, and I could still feel him following me the entire time. At that point I started getting a little freaked out. I'd never had this happen before, so then I decided I'd try losing him by going through different aisles. At first it worked, and I decided now would be my time to leave, so I head up to a cashier, pay for everything, and make my way out. Then I suddenly hear someone behind me call out, "Don't leave yet, baby." I looked back behind me because I knew that comment was directed at me, And lo and behold, the guy in the dirty wife beater. I just ignored him and booked out of the store. As I make it to the car though, I keep hearing him behind me saying things like "come back and I'm talking to you." Thankfully, I managed to get everything in the car and book it out of the parking lot before he got to me. I was shaking by the time I got home. I thought about telling my parents about what happened, but decided not to. I figured it was a one-off kind of thing. Boy, was I wrong. About a few months later, my mom, Em, and one of my older sisters, C, went to the same Walmart to do some more grocery shopping. I told no one about the incident from months prior, but I did gain a tendency to carry my pocket knife with me at all times afterwards, just for added safety. So we're walking in, talking about something dumb, or about what we were supposed to get, I can't remember, when all of a sudden I looked ahead of us, and just froze in my steps. Right in front of us was Mr. Dirty Wife Beater, still looking grungy as all hell, and looking straight at me. M and C had noticed my sudden lack of movement when this guy walks closer to us, never looking elsewhere besides my face, and starts rambling about my colored hair. Why do you change your hair? Is it to get men to look at you? Because I'm looking. Those are the words that are still ingrained into my brain. My mom looked at him confused. Same with my sister. I was still shocked and tense with just how uncomfortable I was and how scared I felt. I didn't really know what to do. Thankfully, maybe due to my fear, I managed to start power walking ahead of my mom and sister while this guy just kept talking. When I stopped in the baking aisle, M and C asked me what that was all about. I finally told them and M started getting concerned, asking me if maybe I should get security involved. For some reason, maybe my anxiety, I decided not to get security involved. I did end up that entire trip looking over my shoulders constantly to make sure we didn't get followed out to the car. So yeah, crazy and or possibly doped up guy in a wife beater, let's not meet. This happened yesterday, and I still can't believe it happened. I'll explain it all at the end, so I'm sorry if it's confusing at first. I've recently moved into a new apartment 3 weeks ago, and I'm sharing it with my sister. The only person we know properly is a single mom who lives in the apartment next to us. Ever since we moved in, she's been giving us advice and helping us out with things, etc. We don't know any of our other neighbors properly yet. Today I was out with friends, and after that I went to get my sister so we could go out for some food. We got home around 10 p.m. My sister and I got into our pajamas, and were sitting around watching TV when our buzzer rang. I jumped up to answer it, and it turned out to be our neighbor's single mom. I asked her what was up and she said that our dad is asking for us downstairs. Straight away my stomach dropped. I immediately asked her if she's sure he said that he was our dad. The reason I asked this was just to make sure that is what she actually said, but she replied that yeah, he said he was our dad and he was asking for us. The neighbor then asked me if she could let him up to our flat, but I told her no. I wanted to shout out to my sister, but I didn't want to worry her right away. So I asked the neighbor to not let him come up yet, and I heard her repeat this to him. I couldn't hear anything for a few minutes, and I started to get really worried. At this point my sister comes up to me and asks who it is. I called out to my neighbor a few times, but she didn't answer. It must have only been about a minute, but it honestly felt like ages when she didn't reply. I was about to tell my sister to call 911 because I was starting to panic, and I didn't know what was happening out there. But then she came back on and told me that he was gone. She then came up to our flat and explained what went down. She said that she was walking back to her flat after finishing work, and she saw a man by the buzzers. At first she assumed that he was just someone who lived there, but when he noticed her walking up he asked for us by name and asked if she could let him up to our flat. She asked him who he was and he told her that he was our dad. Obviously, she buzzed us and told us first, since our neighbor doesn't know us that well, so she doesn't know what our dad looks like. She said that because we're young and on our own, she didn't want to buzz a strange man up to our flat. She said that her mom instincts kicked in when she heard me being hesitant to let him up the flat. She said that apparently after he heard me say that he got really pushy with her and started trying to move her out of the way. He kept on saying to her, "It's okay, I'm their dad. Let me and I'm not going to do anything." She started arguing with him and told him that if I don't feel comfortable letting him in, there's no way he's getting in. He then called her a name and got into a car. And right away, now this is the reason why I hesitated. We haven't spoke to our dad since I was 16. We even considered getting a restraining order from him at one point. He's even not our biological father, but we were legally adopted by him when I was 9. He was very abusive. It got to the point where me, my sister, and my mom had to leave him in the middle of the night. He was always really controlling. And after we left, he would secretly follow us around and leave threatening voicemails on the phone. I found out that he has a criminal record as well. And I believe he was convicted of manslaughter in the 80s. I have no idea of the backstory behind that, and I honestly don't really want to know. Like I said, we haven't heard from him since I was 16, which was 3 years ago, and as soon as she said the word dad, I almost had a panic attack. I asked her to describe him, and she said that because it was dark out, she couldn't really see him. We ended up staying with her because me and my sister are really shaken up. I don't know whether to call the cops or not. I don't know if it's him or not, as it could easily be someone else. I appreciate any advice. In 2019, I moved to a post-Soviet country for work. There's this American diner I always go to on the weekends for lunch. It's a one-of-a-kind place in the city, owned by this half-Cuban dude who loves the USA. Not surprisingly, the place attracts lots of American expats who want to feel home. It takes me around 25 minutes to get there walking from my apartment, but as it gets extremely cold during winter months, I always take a taxi that drops me off next to a big mall, on the opposite side of the narrow street where the diner is. The street is inaccessible by car. It's hard to describe it, but the best way to reach the restaurant's entrance is by crossing the fenced garden of an old wooden church. It's an Orthodox church from the 19th century turned into a museum. It is now surrounded by massive office buildings. The garden is small, you can cross it in 3 minutes, and the exit gate faces the restaurant. During winter, snow covers it completely. It was a Sunday morning, January if I recall correctly, and the snow was fresh on the floor. I was walking to the diner when I noticed unusual footprints in the snow, as if someone was walking in circles, back and forth, and for a long period, but there was nobody around and all of the office buildings seemed to be closed. I keep walking. All of a sudden, a man that was hiding behind the church reveals himself. He doesn't look hostile, but there's something extremely odd about him. He's wearing baggy jeans, a dirty hoodie, and a blue cap. It was extremely cold and his outfit was not the best for the weather. He approaches me smiling. He starts walking on my side. "Hey there," in English. "Hey, where are you from? Don't be afraid. I like foreigners. The vast majority of the population there looks East Asian, so it's easy to tell I'm not a local." His English is surprisingly good. I keep walking in silence. "You don't need to be afraid, my friend. I'm part of the couch surfing community. I'm a nice guy. Look." He tries to show me something on his phone, maybe his couch surfing profile page. "Would you stay at my place?" he says. "No, dude, thank you," I say. Then he goes, "Okay, would you give me some money to buy us both coffee? You don't have to come with me, what the hell." At that moment, I was already in front of the restaurant and casually opened the door to enter. He didn't follow me. 2 weeks later, same Sunday routine, lunch at the diner, and then back home. On my way, I decided to grab a coffee at a nearby place. As I'm walking to the shop, I feel someone following me. It's him, again, and wearing the same clothes. We make eye contact, and he starts laughing. Then he proceeds to do an extremely creepy thing. He hides behind a bus stop that has glass panels on the sides and keeps staring at me. I mean, I could still see him. He was being a complete creep on purpose. I enter the coffee shop and tell the employee, "Hey, there's a guy following me." The girl looks at me worried and says something to the security guard. It's common to see guards in all shops there. The guy enters the shop. The moment the door closes behind him, the employee looks at the guard, who immediately removes him from the place. They were so fast it almost seemed as if they knew him. Thankfully, I never saw him again. A few months back, my girlfriend and I were bored hanging around the house and spontaneously decided to go out for a hike. We don't go hiking often, but the idea appealed to both of us, and even though there was only about an hour left of light, we figured we had enough time to go enjoy a hike before it got too dark. We quickly fill up our water bottles and put on the best walking shoes we had, and we were out the door, driving up into the mountains. Around my area, there are many hiking trails, with the variety of trails increasing as you go up into the mountains. We tended to stay around the base of the mountains in the occasional case of us hiking, where most people would still be walking, but we wanted to change things up and progress further up the mountain road to a trail a friend of mine had mentioned. We kept in mind our time, and figured that we could hike for a bit and simply enjoy the new environment for us, and finish up before it was too late. We arrived at the trailhead and see that there were no cars left along the road where the trail commences, but didn't think much of it due to the time. We still had a good 45 minutes until dark, so we continued on. We start walking down a fairly steep hill that then recoups the elevation at the bottom with an equally steep hill that you have to ascend. We reach the top and then it's smooth sailing from there. We see a lone coyote off of the trail a ways off, and some rabbits, and I made a quip about how those rabbits might need to be careful with that coyote lurking around. She playfully hit me for that one. Approximately less than a mile into the trail, we see a large, fallen tree that made a bridge over a dried riverbed and decided to take a rest, climb around on it, and take pictures. We're there for about 10 minutes, and then resume hiking. We continue on the trail for a short distance, until she hears a rustle in the trees behind us. We stop, mildly spooked due to the assumed size of whatever made that rustling, but continue on only briefly before she decides she's done and that we need to head back. It's twilight now, so I agree with her and we turn around to head back to the car. When we made it back to the fallen tree, my shoe had come untied, so I used the trunk to fix my loose laces and look behind us for the first time on the hike. I see a person dressed entirely in black with their hood on that was a significant distance behind us, walking at a slow, even pace. It wasn't something out of the ordinary, so what if they're wearing black with their hood on? I wear black most of the time, and it's cold out. I shouldn't make assumptions. This does trigger me to be more alert, however, and I inform my girlfriend of this person's presence. It's now dusk. We continue on at an intentionally faster pace and go through a winding section of the trail, and I lose sight of the person. When we come around the final bend of the section, I figure they're far behind us, and that there's nothing to worry about. Sooner than later the person is behind us again, but much closer, probably 50 feet in comparison to 100 feet before, and we had increased our speed, so this alarmed us. We briskly walk around another bend, and as soon as we come around it, we book it. It seemed to be a natural reaction on both of our parts as we just started running without a word said to initiate it. We are nearing the trailhead now, with only the hills to deal with. We catch our breaths for a moment, and I turn around again. I see the person seemingly halt a sprint upon noticing me looking back, as if they were trying to uphold the illusion of simply walking. At this point I shout go, and we sprint down the hill. What little light was left struggled to make its way through the dense trees surrounding us, and the steep hill proved challenging to run down without a clear path to be seen. We both stumble down the hill, almost falling multiple times and slamming our feet onto rocks and loose brush, but we didn't fall and we didn't look behind us. We make it to the bottom, but must continue up the initial hill, and then we will have made it out. We persevere up the incline and make it back to our car. I briefly breathe in relief as I start my car, heart pounding and adrenaline racing. As I reverse onto the road, the person emerges at the trailhead, apparently breathing heavily. We finally get a glimpse of him. His hood had fallen off of his head, exposing his pale complexion and dead eyes that were only illuminated by a single lantern at the start of the trail. He was holding something in his hand, but it was too dark to see and I was not interested in sticking around to make out the object. I shift into drive and accelerate as fast as my car could muster, leaving him behind in the dust of the empty side of the road. My trail stalker dude, let's not meet.